Okay, everyone. Time being 1 o'clock, I will open the session with Legislative Administration. Ask Representative Turcotte to lead us in the pledge, please.
Thank you, Representative Hill. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. A couple of quick housekeeping. As you can see, the chair to my left is empty, which means we're missing our clerk today. But our able vice chair slash used to be clerk, Representative Sheehan, will take over those duties. The plan is still the plan as it sits on our agenda here. We'll go through the 3 hearings and then jump into a unscripted work session for just a few minutes. And beyond that, I guess we're all set to open the hearing on Senate Bill 197 and recognize the assistant to Senator Pearl, the prime sponsor, Ryan Malidi, and welcome to Legislative Administration.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Ryan Malidi, and I am here to introduce Senate Bill 197 on behalf of Senator Pearl, who is currently introducing another one of his prime sponsor bills. Senate Bill 197 removes supervision of the nurse employed by the Legislative Facilities Committee from the Department of Health and Human Services and provides that the nurse shall act within the scope of practice provided by the Board of Nursing and RSA 326-B, the Nurse Practices Act. John Williams, the Director of Legislative Affairs for the Department of Health and Human Services, is here to speak on SB 197 and to take any questions from the committee. I would also be happy to take any questions for Senator Pearl if any of you would like me to relay to him and have them answered after the committee. Senator Pearl, thanks you for your consideration of the bill, and as I said, open for any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Senator Pearl to relay? Yes.
Thank you very much, and thank you for coming in on behalf of Senator Pearl. What is the problem that has been identified?
I don't have an exact answer to your question, but like I said, I will have that answered by Senator Pearl or John Williams behind me.
Thank you.
I think you will get your answer with our next pink card.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. If not, we will be in touch with Senator Pearl. Further questions? Seeing none. Thank you very much for your help. With that, Attorney John Williams, welcome.
Chairman Hill and members of the Legislative Administration Committee, for the record, I am John Williams. I am the Legislative Director of the Department of Health and Services, and Mr. Malidi did a very wonderful job giving you an overview of Senate Bill 197, which was requested by the Department of Health.
Oh, sorry.
Made at the request of the Department of Health and Human Services. I am here today on behalf of Dr. Jonathan Ballard. He is our Chief Medical Officer. He could not be here today, but I've worked with him on legislation, so I'm prepared to answer the questions around the bill. The bill amends the health room where the RN here is posted to take out a very small provision of law. When we were reviewing the provisions of law that have not been touched for over 3 decades, in other words, there has not been an amendment to the section of law since 1995, that it was identified that current language has the department's commissioner, who is not a doctor, not a nurse, having medical supervisory oversight over your RN. And so the thought would be to better place it, as you see with school nurses, under the scope of practice for an RN. And that's exactly what this does. We did have a conversation with your chief operating officer for the Joint Legislative Committee with Mr. Terry Poff, and Terry is fine with the proposed changes that the department is seeking. We also sought out working with the executive director from the Office of Professional Licensure and Certification, who oversees the Board of Nursing, which gives the regulations over nurses, and the executive director, Dee Jurius. She is fine with this language as well. I hope that answers your question as to the reason and purpose behind this legislation. It does leave intact, most importantly, the continued relationship that the department would have with the legislature relative to being a resource to your staff regarding health needs here at the General Court. So, Chairman Hill, that concludes my testimony. Not as exciting as I'm sure portraits, and you're going to probably find out everything between oils and everything else that on your next couple of bills, but that concludes my testimony today. I'm available to take questions.
It was enthralling. Are there questions? Representative Wall, did you get the answer to your?
When Attorney Williams comes in, I'm always satisfied with what he has to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Further questions? Yeah, Representative Wade.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is just a brief one. So you mentioned that it previously stated in this law that the commissioner had some sort of supervisory role. So that was written into the bill, but from my understanding, it wasn't actually happening. Like they weren't actually supervising because it didn't really make sense. So all we're doing is just striking that language. It wasn't like they are still supervising.
Your understanding is correct. The last time this law was ever amended, if you look at the bill itself, you'll see the language which is struck at the very end of this section of law. And to my knowledge, Dr. Harry Bird was the last medical doctor, I think, serving in that capacity, and that actually was prior to 1995. So it's safe to say that if they were providing medical oversight, they were not licensed clinicians. And so I will respectfully plead whatever amendment at this time, safeguard the department. I'm just teasing a little bit, but no.
Gotcha. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Further questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I want to give the committee a brief overview of where we are here. As you've seen in a number of cases this year, there are some issues with the RSAs that have been popping up with the bills that we've had. This is another example of that. We have, well, as he stated, 1995 was the last time that this has been addressed, and bureaucracies as they are tend to mold their own actions, sometimes not within what the RSA is instructing. So we had an earlier conversation with the House Attorney and with Terry Paff, the Chief Operating Officer. There's a couple of other little features that they're asking the committee to hang on to this for a little while before we exec it. They would like to make some suggestions for how, if we're going to amend this in any way, shape, or form, they would like to suggest a couple of other areas that we amend within this statute. So what we plan on doing, I originally thought there weren't going to be any amendments, and this was going to be a pretty simple pass on and put on consent. And I think it still might. I think there's just going to be a couple additional modifications that will be made, and I'm assuming they'll be discussing those with you as well, so that we're all on the same page. I think really what we're trying to do is update the statute so that it follows how procedures have morphed over time. That's all. So with that, I'll close the hearing on 197, and I have no idea what time it is, so are we close? So we have 5 minutes, and then we'll open the hearing on 186. I will open the hearing on Senate Bill 186 and recognize the prime sponsor's assistant, I believe, I have a card for Max Taylor, Assistant to Senator Ricciardi.
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Max Taylor, and I'm the legislative aide to Senator Ricciardi. I'm here today on her behalf to introduce Senate Bill 186, which allows the Joint Legislative Historical Committee to accept and display a portrait of Senator Jeb Bradley in the New Hampshire State House. This bill is not just about honoring one person, it is about recognizing a leader who has made a lasting impact on our state through years of dedicated public service. Senator Bradley has been a tireless advocate for the people of New Hampshire. From his early years in the New Hampshire House of Representatives to his time in the United States Congress and later as president of the New Hampshire Senate, he has helped shape policies that have improved the lives of countless Granite Staters. His work on issues such as responsible budgeting, environmental conservation, and healthcare access has left a lasting mark on our state. Beyond his policy, Senator Bradley has always been known for his ability to bring people together. He has worked across party lines to find common sense solutions, proving that effective leadership is about collaboration, not division. As Senate President, he helped guide New Hampshire through both challenges and opportunities, always with a focus on what was best for the state. A portrait of Senator Bradley in the State House is more than just a tribute. It is a reminder of the values he represents: service, integrity, and a deep commitment to the people of New Hampshire. It will stand as an inspiration to future lawmakers, reminding them that leadership is about working hard, listening to others, and always striving to make our state better. With that, Senator Ricciardi urges the committee to move ought to pass on Senate Bill 186 and recognize Senator Bradley's incredible contributions to New Hampshire. Thank you for your time. I'd be happy to answer what I can or take any questions back to Senator Ricciardi.
Thank you very much. Are there questions for Mr. Taylor? I have one. I noticed in reading the hearing on the other portrait bill that we have before us that portrait has already been painted and is completed. Is this one?
To my knowledge, this portrait has not been completed. Last I heard, they were trying to commission it, but as you may know, it's being paid for by Senator Bradley, so we didn't need to go out for the funding. So I don't know if the process has been started to complete the portrait, but
Thank you. Next question is, how does it get determined what size the portrait is going to be?
I'm not sure about that, but I'd be happy to ask Senator Ricciardi as well as maybe Terry and get back to you.
That would be good. I've often wondered, and I haven't seen it in any of the prior requirements that were written many years ago. And as we've just spoken about the RSAs being in somewhat limited condition, I'd like to know if when it is requested by a certain size, and because as the senator knows, I'm sure, space is limited. And this does state that it will be hung in the State House. Is there any indication where in the State House?
That has not been determined to my knowledge, but that's another question I can bring back to her.
Thank you. Further questions? Up. One of you. Representative Wall.
Just, perhaps it's more appropriate for our executive committee, but session rather. The Joint Historic Committee is currently determining sizes of portraits because there's been a problem with space and some huge ones that we have here. And there's been some concern about placement as well, and it is up to the Joint Historic Committee. I was working with some people the other day, and we will be meeting within a few days regarding placement of portraits. So we can't answer that question as a committee. But it's being worked on, and that goes along with exactly what Chairman Hill has said. We need to update some of our RSAs. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Wade? No. I think you're off the hook. Thanks very much.
Thank you all for your time.
You bet. Now, what do we have for time? We have 10 minutes then? All right, 10-minute break. we're good to open the hearing on Senate Bill 200, recognize the prime sponsor, Senator Reardon. Welcome to Legislative Administration.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and it is a pleasure to be here at Legislative Administration this morning. It's afternoon. Today, it's lovely to
We're
be here
easy,
today.
whatever you want.
And introduce SB 200, and I do have written testimony for you. I won't read the whole thing that I have here, but the purpose of the bill is to ask the Joint Legislative Historical Committee to accept and hang a portrait of former Senator Sylvia Larson, who was my predecessor in this seat, District 15. I don't know if I said my name's Tara Reardon. I'm the District 15 Senator representing Concord, Bow, and Hopkinton. Senator Larson held the seat for 20 years and represented not only Concord, but the towns of Henniker, Hopkinton, and Warner at the time. Was the leader of the Senate Democrats for over a decade and was Senate President from 2006 to 2010. Over those 20 years, she was the prime sponsor of 117 pieces of legislation and a co-sponsor of 454 other pieces of legislation. 45 of her prime sponsor bills actually were enacted into law, and she covered a really diverse range of subjects as the senator, including projects that are near and dear to Concord, the Croponi Conference Center, authorizing the commission to study that. Most of us have been there for one thing or another, and the renaming of the McAuliffe Shepherd Discovery Center. She was the prime sponsor of New Hampshire's college tuition savings program, which I know my family has taken advantage of, implementing the pre-engineering technology curriculum in our public high schools, starting the Land and Community Heritage Program, LCHIP, as a result of her legislation, and our state's children's insurance program. And as far back as 2001, she sponsored a bill to create incentives to reduce regulatory barriers to affordable housing. She championed some other important issues, including prescription drug coverage for contraceptive services, confidentiality of victims of stalking and sexual and domestic violence. To honor her 20 years of service and her tireless advocacy, empowering and championing individuals, including myself, she was one of my mentors, and her work on behalf of women's rights, education, housing, and the overall well-being of the Capital Region, I would ask the committee to accept a portrait of Sylvia Larson. The portrait has been created. It's actually downstairs in room 120 right now. It was done by a famous New Hampshire portrait artist that Senator Soucy will say a little bit more about, and it will forever remind us and future generations of her extraordinary contributions to the state Senate. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Soucy painted the portrait?
She's going to talk a little bit more
Oh,
about
all
it.
right,
Yeah,
all
she
right.
probably could have in her free time, but yeah, I don't think she did.
Just checking. Further questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Chair will call Senator Soucy, the painter.
Been called a lot of things, not that before, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. For the record, I'm Donna Soucy. I'm here representing myself. You heard a lot about the accomplishments legislatively of Senator Larson. My reason for being here is that I had the privilege of serving as Senator Larson's chief of staff for 4 years when she served as Senate president. Those were really remarkable and extraordinary times. She actually presided over the first female legislative majority in the country. It was a bipartisan majority at the time. The New Hampshire legislature was featured on the Today Show, on countless news venues. I know the state of Nevada now tries to take credit because they have both chambers that were the majority female, but it actually was here in New Hampshire in our own state Senate. Senator Larson's accomplishments are extraordinary and certainly well documented in terms of legislation she sponsored. But I think serving as her chief of staff, I really got to see the strength of her leadership from behind the scenes. 2009, 2010 were some difficult financial years across the country and in this state in particular. Senator Larson was just an extraordinary leader, very steadfast, very bipartisan, very open, had an open door policy as Senate President to everyone and wanted to see the best for the members that she served with. If I could really sum up her service, would really say that she's an example of grace under pressure. She was an unflappable person. She certainly held steadfast to her beliefs, but was always the person who would bring calm into the room and would see that at the end of the day, the people's business would get done. So she's really not only a mentor to me and many others, but just an extraordinary leader. As Senator Reardon said, the painting was done by Ralph Stoney Jacobs, who is a local New Hampshire artist. He lives in Whitefield, has painted several of the portraits that hang here in the State House. The portrait is completed, is framed, is ready, once accepted, to be hung at the discretion of the Joint Historical Commission. So I hope that this committee would look favorably upon this legislation. I think as we, evolve, having more and more of our leaders recognized in this way is truly important and is very beneficial for fourth graders and others that tour our building to know some of the great leaders that have come before us. So with that, I'll conclude my testimony and happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Representative Wade.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just super quick question. It was mentioned that the portrait is already downstairs. Is it just stored down there or is it actually already hanging up?
It's stored
Okay.
down there, so to speak. So the portrait had been completed, and Senator Larson was actually in the midst of a transition, moving from one home to another here in Concord. And during that time, she asked if we would hold on to it and keep it in a safe place pending the passage of this legislation. So you're welcome to visit it and check it out.
Representative Sartzer.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your testimony. Do you know what the size of the portrait is?
I don't have the exact dimensions. It's smaller than the portraits, the gubernatorial portraits that hang in the entryway of the governor's office. It's a bit smaller than that. And it's to scale. Well, some of those are quite large, but no, definitely smaller than that. But I
You
can get you
didn't-
the dimensions, be happy to provide those.
You're not benefiting from the pantomime of the size behind you. It looks
Yeah.
2 feet by 3 feet, something like that.
Yeah,
A little in excess of 3 feet, but
Yeah.
frame is huge.
Yeah.
So, yeah, a little in excess.
So I had a question or two. One is that the legislation says that the hanging of the portrait in the State House, which seems not to offer any room for change by the historical committee. Is that intentional, or do you have a place picked out?
well, I certainly don't. I've had conversations with the current Senate President, Senator Carson, and she was actually consulted when we were talking about this legislation. She's taken a keen interest in having a lot of the portraits of women hang in the State House as opposed to here in the LOB. And there is no specific location. As I said, it'd be discretion of the committee, but the preference obviously is to put it in the State House.
You are aware of the limitations in space that we have.
Aware of the space, also aware of the number of other portraits that hang in various places. So there's still some room.
Okay. Further? Seeing none, thank you very much
Thank
for
you
your
very much,
testimony.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
Well,
6 minutes.
well, we have 6 minutes before we enter. I'm not sure. Have we held a work session before in this session? Thank you very much. We're good. So in 6 minutes, we'll open a work session and we'll describe it at that point. And I would, and the topics are going to be the 2 portraits, and see where we go from there.
Mr.
So-
Chairman,
5 minutes. Yep.
I've seen the portrait and see the papers hanging on the bulletin board is about that size. It's not small.
Okay. We'll be back
But
in
we-
5 minutes.
But as I said earlier, the Joint Historic Committee is trying to address that issue. So regarding, there was a suggestion made that all the women be on one hallway for display, and someone on the Joint Historic Committee suggested that. He said, no, we're trying to do things chronologically, and there are some portraits that may not necessarily be where they should be at this time anyway. So there's a lot of work to be done. Thank you. Yes, I hear you.
I have to admit, I didn't understand the answer that Representative Wade had got. So is the picture in a box, or is it like on an easel so it can be viewed?
It's an actual portrait. It's been done. It's been
But
framed.
it's-
I hate to say that it's sitting on the floor. They were more delicate about it,
But it's in a
It's
box.
just in the, it's all set to go.
But it's in a
just
box. I can't go down and see the portrait. I can see the box that it's stored in.
The what?
Can you see it? Is it in a box? or can you
No,
see it?
no, we can walk in and see it anytime. Do you know where room 120 is at the State House? Okay, the visitor center, if you're walking down, the visitor center is on your left, the Hall of Flags is on your right.
Yeah.
There's an office straight ahead. Some senators share that. Jennifer is the name, Jennifer Gallagher is the receptionist or administrative assistant. And I think she would be willing to show people that portrait if they want to see it.
But it's currently stored in the box.
Well, it's sitting there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's there along with Senator Martha Fuller Clark.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, who shares that office?
The senators have moved right along getting their portraits done. As for Jeb Bradley, I'm not too worried about him getting his done, even if it hasn't been commissioned. Where there's a will, there's a way. Jeb gets things done.
Can we wait until we're in a All right. The time being 1:45, the scheduled time for our whole committee work session on the two portraits. So the idea here is probably the best way to describe it is it's somewhere between hearings where we take testimony and exec sessions where we vote on those bills. This is a less formal process where we can offer ideas, offer suggestions, offer thoughts about how we want to handle these two portraits. Some of the conversation I would like to throw on the floor for discussion are the fact that, as we've seen, RSAs in a lot of areas, including this, need additional work. There are areas of conflict, there are overlapping responsibilities, there are all kinds of things. One of the things that I've done I think it was last term, was request our researcher, our very fine researcher, to put together some information about what other states do. And she will be sending you the link if she hasn't already. Okay, as we speak. And the link shows a summary of, I recall somewhere 6 or 7 different states. There's some characteristics that we may want to adopt. There are some, and I'll toss up one idea. One state, quite a few of them have a moratorium on portraits, and some have put in limitations that the person needs to have been deceased for 5 years before a portrait is accepted. All kinds of ideas. So I wanted to try to use this time to see what the committee thinks about not doing anything with these currently, but use them as a vehicle to address the shortcomings of our statutes and and the guidelines that are provided to the historical committee, who has a bulk of the responsibility in this area. There's a lot of meat here that we could do a great service for the future legislative administration and the legislature itself if we were able to clean up some of the statute problems that we have. So with that, I'll toss the idea on the table. What is it does anyone want to do with these things? I think we need to, in some place, for instance, start talking about a size limitation. I think we need some idea of where these should be directed to go, notwithstanding any of the requirements already by the historical committee. So with that, I'm open to conversation. Representative Payeur.
I just had a question. Are there known requirements by the historical committee?
Of what?
For these portraits, you just said that there's requirements.
So if you read the RSA on, let me find it here. You have it? No. There is a RSA power. No, those are the governor ones. There is, let me see if anybody know the number off the top of your head? Yes. I had a picture of it up here at some point. They have, yeah. So if you look at 17-I:2, committee responsibilities, it goes from Roman numeral 1 down to Roman numeral 10. And they are responsible, I'll read one of them. 9 is to be responsible for the placement of portraits, flags, busts, statues, and other memorial objects within or on legislative facilities as defined by RSA 14:14B in consultation with the Division of Historical Resources, Department of Natural and Cultural Resources. They also, however, were under Roman 5 to administer and enforce the collections policy established by the committee created in 1990 for subjects of historical, cultural, and artistic value and recommend legislation as needed to implement this policy. Not until today did I ever see that, that collections policy. So I can't speak much to it, but I think it's fair to say 1990 till now, there may have been some changes made or some things that we need to look at. This looks like it, but I really can't tell you. Maybe Senator Representative Wall can give us more ideas. There are procedures for accepting cultural objects into state collections. There are, I just don't know if any of it is being actively utilized. I don't know if there needs to be corrections. I have never seen, maybe you can tell me, if they have ever suggested any legislative actions that they say is necessary in that. So,
Yes.
thank you. This is the only one I know of in existence. And I was given this by Terry Paff today. I probably could, yeah. Yes, you will get a copy of it. But I'm not, you know, this isn't the only thing. There are a lot of things in here that are need of work. They are not the end all and be all. There are other departments that overlap some of their positions.
Just to add a little bit, there are a lot of details. And for example, at the State House, the governor has control of the second floor. Everything on display is by the governor. We can't do legislative portraits or anything on the second floor. The first floor by the Hall of Flags, a lot of military things down there. So we essentially have part of the first floor and the third floor at the State House. Also, in terms of accepting anything, the Joint Historic Committee, which is the House and Senate, has authority, as well as the governor and council. It depends on what means by which anything is coming to the state. For example, a few years ago, some soldiers in Afghanistan signed an American flag, and they were so proud to serve our country and to survive and be over there. They sent the flag to the Joint Historic Committee, which couldn't accept it. So it went to the Executive Council, and they could not accept it because essentially, by signing names on the flag, as much as it meant to the people who did it, it desecrated the flag. So I have no idea what became of that, but there are different rules and regulations for everything under the sun. And the problem is the Joint Historic Committee does change. Everything does around here every 2 years. This last time we only had a couple of meetings because we had a House member who chaired it. We now have Senator Carson, who likes to get things done. We will be meeting, I think it's May 5th, and this is something that will be on our agenda. There's a lot to be done, and there are a lot of questions, and more people are wanting to bring portraits in, for example, and there is a situation in terms of the size, as we talked earlier today, as well as limitations on space, and where should these portraits be displayed. Is it more meaningful in the LOB? Is it more meaningful in the Senate? The Senate only has a small portion of the State House where they can display things. It's outside the Senate chambers and part of the third floor. So they're very limited in terms of where they can display their portraits. So an awful lot needs to be done. A lot has been needed to be done over the years. There have been times it's been very frustrating being a member because it depends again on who's chairing it, and times when people who have been appointed have not necessarily had a commitment to history and our State House complex, and that's what the committee has oversight on for the whole complex. And actually, we had the State Heritage Collections Committee for 10 or 11 years, and that was for everything for the state artifacts in the state buildings and throughout the state, not only artifacts but land and buildings. Because that was never appropriately funded a few years ago, that was combined into the Joint Historic Committee. So there's a lot there and a lot that needs to be reviewed and updated. So that's just a little background.
That's great. That's exactly the point. To try to figure out, how much of this is still pertinent. They accept and expend funds appropriated by the general court or received by other sources for the purposes of authorized by this chapter. In all my time here, I think that's all done off budget. I've never seen that, but there are funds that are in there.
We get 10,000 a year, and that's for preservation and restoration. A lot of the portraits at the State House that you may have noticed, occasionally a portrait's missing, it's off being restored or repaired, and then it comes back again. And these things, it's not cheap. We have certain artists with whom we do collaborate, and it depends on, of course, the amount of damage, the age of the portrait, and this, that, and the other, condition of the frames. So the 10,000 can go quickly, but we've got it now so that as a non-lapsing fund and so that people can contribute as well. So there's that little progress, but again, there's an awful lot of work that needs to be done. And I think it would be appropriate for us to perhaps work with the Joint Historic Committee to see what we can do so that we don't keep getting questions about what are we going to do regarding this portrait and how big or how small is it going to be. So thank you.
Representative Verville.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm a little curious, and Representative Wall, maybe you can help me out here. Are all the portraits that have been accepted for display in the State House displayed currently, or is there an archive?
Again, we know that there are two senators' portraits, Senator Larson and Senator Fuller Clark, waiting to figure out what we're going to do. And of course, we're still trying to figure out the Wentworth Cheswell situation. But other than that, to the best of my knowledge, everything that should be displayed is displayed at this time.
Thank you. So, Mr. Chairman, if I could continue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you. So, because part of what we're hearing, right, from the petitioners on these two bills is that they'd actually like to get more portraits of more people of varied backgrounds for display for various reasons. And while that is certainly all well and good, the space is limited, right? And so eventually you're going to end up with more portraits than you have space for, which means you either slam the door shut at that point, or you have to create an archive to rotate through portraits, right, where some come down and some go up. So now you need a place to store them. As she's already alluded to, as Representative Wall has already alluded to, the storage condition of these items is critically important if you want to preserve them into the future. And so to say it more bluntly, that does not come without a cost, right? So you need a space typically that's climate controlled to store these things in. And I only know that because of budget constraints in Deerfield. The last couple of winters, we've chosen to close our historic town hall down instead of pay to heat it when it's largely not used. And come to find out, that's probably the worst thing that we could do to that building, right, is to let it go cold and then reheat in the spring. And so with that, I think it really would behoove the committee to take a very serious look at how this is handled and try to get some very black and white guardrails as to how to proceed to take a lot of the gray out of it so that we either don't swamp the facility with more art than it can possibly handle and then have to create a space for the storage and if you're rotating through, you know, then you need some sort of policy for how do you determine how you rotate through, et cetera. So I think it would be time well spent. I think it would be a great benefit to the facilities and to the citizens as a whole to take some time and try to do this right.
Thank you.
May I respond?
Representative Wall.
You bring up some really, really important points. I personally have felt not all the portraits that are there need to be displayed there. One of the most recent ones you may be familiar with if you've been here a couple terms is Marilla Ricker, the first woman who ever ran for governor. Wasn't even qualified to vote. She died before the women had the right to vote, but she was very wealthy. She came from Dover and was politically involved and was a widow at that time, had wealth. So because of her caring and all, she put her name out to run for governor one time. And her portrait's now on the first floor down there at the research office. I call it the accounting office, the one that's kitty corner to it. Part of the reason they put it there is one, she was the first woman to run for governor. Two, because there weren't enough women's portraits around. Well, golly, women weren't involved with things publicly for politics back when, and that's why we have so many men there. But we are getting more interest, obviously, in having women's portraits there. My personal feeling, just an example, not to say it has to be, but as an example, Marilla Ricker, first woman to run for governor. Why is her portrait not up in election law? We can move some portraits around. And again, the size is going to become very important. You've seen some mammoth ones over there, and there's no need to have anything that big, bigger than life. And so these are discussions the committee has had, but then the term is ended and we have a new chairman and we have, and it varies from the House to the Senate and all. So I think it would behoove this committee to work and try and either just work with what we have for the laws right now or maybe collaborate somehow with the Joint Historic Committee and do some planning. There has been a lot of talk in recent years about what if for the future, because at some point they are going to get overloaded with portraits across the street. There's been some talk when we did have a curator, which we don't now, to put portraits one above the other and around. I personally don't like that. It's a cluttered look, and I think there's a better way to do things. And they talked about having wires to hang them and all. Just, again, let's keep the dignity of the State House. And so
We
there's a
do
lot
have a
to
new
discuss.
garage coming.
What's that?
We do have a new garage coming.
Yeah. So, but Mr. Chairman, when your portrait's done, I'm not altogether sure where we can put it.
Oh, I think I'm pretty sure that Representative Sorensen.
Thank you. Is it possible to loan them to the New Hampshire Historical Society and have the ones that, if we were to decide some get taken down after a period of time, they go to the Historical Society because they have the ability to?
I think we have the expert right here.
The New Hampshire Historical Society is not the state of New Hampshire. It simply happens to be in a great location and it has that name. You know, who knows what the future holds, but if something's given for the state to own, then the state will have to decide what to do. Yeah, thank you. That's a good question, though.
Thank you. I have a question for you, Representative Wall. Did they take down a portrait to put up the one for the female,
Take them down for what?
for the woman who ran for governor? Did they take down an historic portrait to make room for her?
No,
Move things around. They don't take them down permanently.
think
Just moved around.
there is some rotation.
Yeah.
Some come out for cleaning and maintenance, and some others go back up. So there.
And in recent years, there's been more of an effort to put things in chronologically. You know, you didn't have a governor in 1822 and another one in 1868 right next to each other. you know, we want things to be so people can walk along and have a sense of time. So that's a current thought.
Representative Bertle.
Yeah, thank you. So, to go to Representative Sorensen's question, probably the more fitting state agency would probably be the state archive. Although I don't know that their facilities are really kitted out for those types of things, but I think the state archive would be the more appropriate place. You know, it's not a crunch that's going to kill us today, right? I mean, I was in State House 100 yesterday afternoon, and you know, gazing at the artwork as I waited my turn, and there's clearly room on those walls for a few more portraits, without a doubt. But you know, that space fills up a lot faster than one might suppose as you start to accept more and more portraits.
May I respond to that? Thank
I'm
you.
sure you can.
Thank you. For a lot of years, there were no portraits or anything on those walls in State House 100. And Senator Carson, as chair of judiciary, now uses that room and wants the judges to be on the walls. And because that was originally I think, the state library. And there isn't a lot of room at the Supreme Court on their walls, a small building, for where to put the judges. So that's another issue that needs to be addressed at some point. That, you know, it's the State House. And yes, I respect the fact that we have very important people on those walls in the past few years. But at the same time, is that really the long-term appropriate place to have them? I don't know. And this is all going to be rather fluid, I think. Things will have to change over time because we'll be getting more portraits. And so I think whatever we decide on has to be appropriate for the time, but also leave the door open for the future.
Representative Nodder.
Thank you. Can't they just hang those pictures in their offices? Like instead of having them sit on the floor, they can hang up Senator or the Honorable Larson and Fuller Clark.
We don't. We don't do that. We're not. Yes, I mean these are still at the position of allowing the Joint and Historical to say where they're going to be hung. That's how this is written now. I guess I think I'm hearing an overarching, at least desire to look into this. I think what you'll find is the more people that you talk to about the subject, there are a lot of opinions, and everybody has a strong feeling about it throughout this complex. And you'll find, you know, I realize we have no people that have come to talk to us about this, but if we do this kind of a work session over the summer, there will be people here anxious to put their 2 cents in. So I know we have to meet at least one more time in order to exec whatever changes, or at least look at whatever changes are suggested on the nurse bill. I'm going to suggest that we consider the idea or do our own research and look into how big a process this might be, and if there is a way of carving some of it out for the purpose of making this situation better, taking a look at the information that our researcher has put together from what other states have done. I'll send around this report so you can see what's here. And then at that time that we meet for the exec session there, I think what we should do is then decide whether to retain the bills and use these as the vehicles for any of those changes. That would be my suggestion.
I think you have, Mr. Chairman, may I? I
Representative
think you
Wall.
have some very important points to make. Whoever will do the committee reports on these, I'm sure will get the point across that we value these portraits and we do want to do something with them, but we need to start making some decisions also. And what I would request is if we're going to be looking to see what other states do, if we perhaps stick with I don't know, perhaps the original 13 colonies, because we have more portraits than Wyoming would have, for example. So I'd like to know what's being done on the East Coast.
They're bigger portraits
Okay.
out in Wyoming, though, I think. Yeah, I think we all should do our own little part, come back and meet and decide if the idea, I have looked at this longer than any of you, I'm assuming, with the possible exception of Representative Wall. Um, it, it, it's a mess. Every time any of the items on the list, of who's responsible for what, there is crosstalk and cross responsibility and just a mess. So if we could take a look at that, I think we would be much better off. Do you have your finger up for purpose, Representative
I do.
Turville? Yes.
You said you were, had been involved with this quite a bit before. Has there ever been any discussion of maybe weaving into the physical presence the possibility of a virtual wall?
Not to my knowledge. I've not.
A virtual wall would give you unlimited space, and as far as the fixed space, you could rotate out some as you add new, and you would have, again, on a virtual wall, you would have an unlimited supply at a very, very minimal cost.
Certainly worth
Just a
looking
thought.
at as far as, I mean, space is expensive these days, and that's it. Yes, Representative Wall.
A few years ago, when Representative Bob Rowe was still in the House, he got going on that, and I don't know the current status of it, but we did put money into having a virtual tour of the State House, and that's a
that's
really
true.
good
We
idea
did
to
that.
include others that are not up at that time. I like that. Thank you.
I just wanted to
sorry.
add that I like
Representative
that
Nodder.
idea too. Thank you. I like that idea too. And I wanted to point out that in our 200-year history, well, 206, there have been many speakers of the House, and they're not all up on the wall in the speaker's office because there's no room. And they were all the speaker. They all deserve to be remembered, but there's just a lack of space. It's like, where does it end?
Is it
Where do
a
you draw
space
the line?
issue, or is it just that they don't?
Like we
have
need
pictures
one.
for
We
those
need one for you because you're the chairman. We need one for you because you've been here forever and you helped
No.
put the Hall of Flags together.
Representative Wade?
Former chairman.
Thank you. So I had two things to ask. So one was the idea that the historical committee is in charge of collections of these objects, or portraits potentially, but we also have to pass this legislation to accept the gift. So is there some kind of cutoff for what type of thing can be just handled by the historical committee versus like something that we have to pass as a bill in order to accept a portrait? Like, because from how it was written in the memo that was sent over, it sounded like the legislative committee could just handle collections on their own, but they don't currently do that. So that would be
Representative Wall?
Okay.
yeah.
Point well taken. Yeah.
Yeah, as
Yeah,
I just wasn't sure
it-
what the cutoff was.
Yeah, it
for-
would seem a shame to, put everything on hold, but if we accept it, where do we store these and what do we do? Maybe that will inspire the Joint Historic Committee to get up and running on this. It's long overdue. Thank you.
And then the second question was about the Jeb Bradley portrait, since it was mentioned that has not been commissioned yet. So if there are concerns about portrait size, is there any, like, would we want to recommend that they hold off on that in case size restrictions are made or something like that?
My suggestion.
But before they
my-
commission it, and
My
it's
belief
way too
is
big.
you can suggest all you want. That people do what they want to do, especially when they're paying for it. So, yes.
Boyd,
Yes.
who pays for these portraits initially?
All over. It's across the board. Some are. Well, go ahead.
Anyone can pay for them, but we don't. We do not commission them. We do not pay for them. as with the Wentworth Cheswell.
meaning the
portrait, yeah,
historical
yeah,
committee
of-
does not.
Yeah,
My suggestion would be, if the families wanted the portraits, give it back to them and utilize
yeah,
Representative Turcotte's idea,
yeah.
Of the virtual.
the virtual. That
Cer-
way,
I mean,
that way it's out of our hands. We don't have to worry about it.
we don't,
Let
we
the
don't have to
families
make
take
that
care of it.
decision now, is my
Right,
point. I
this
mean,
is just a
these
suggestion.
are all
We're gonna
just-
be looking at suggestions down the road. This is
Yeah.
mine.
Okay, yep, that's all on the table here as we speak. I think that we have to do something. And no one, I don't think you will find anyone in any of the organizations that are touched by this that will disagree with the fact that something needs to be done. So, it's just how we want to begin. I would suggest, with the help of our researcher, we examine through the RSAs what possible groups are impacted by this, and ask them for input. So at that point, we can certainly offer Representative Turcotte's idea and say, I don't know if any of these groups that, I believe they will come out of the woodwork when you're starting to touch any of these things.
And as we open the can of worms.
Yes, that's probably a better way of saying. Representative Sorensen.
Thank you. So I like the idea of the virtual one, but I assume that would cost money, and Rep. Wall just said that the historical commission's not responsible for money related things, so I'm just curious where that money would come from.
Again, I'm not quite sure of the status of what we're doing. Excuse me, I'm getting hoarse. Excuse me. That we did put money aside for virtual tour of the State House, which means almost exclusively the portraits. Of course, we have the Hall of Flags and other things over there as well. For a virtual tour and all of that would come through, probably, at least currently, would come through the money that the Joint Historic Committee has. And again, they did put money aside for that. And I don't remember when Representative Rowe was last year. 6 years ago, maybe?
Yeah.
That will project a video or a picture in person.
Yeah. The Visitor Center would have that information at this point with Virginia Drew. What have you got?
I just looked at New Hampshire State House virtual tour,
Good.
and there's a website. It looks like you just have like a 3D map. And there was a video that was posted in 2024 of just somebody walking around the State House as well. But it doesn't look like there's a specific portrait. Like if I tap on it, it doesn't pull up any information or anything. That's just what I found.
Yeah, and there are pamphlets out with some, if not all, of the current portraits on them.
Representative Virgil.
Yeah, thank you. So always the contrarian. When I hear virtual, I kind of cringe. I guess I'm more old school than I'd like to admit sometimes. So when I close my eyes and somebody says virtual wall, what I imagine is that there is a wall in the State House. It's an LED or LCD screen that's then rotating through pictures, and that's all well and good. Personally, I like an oil painting in a fancy frame, actually hanging on a wall and collecting dust as they age and patina. I think there's certain value in that. You certainly catch cultural context. I was admiring a fine young man on the wall of State House Room 100, and there was something black in his midsection, and come to find out he was holding his hat. What he was hiding and behind the hat was up for debate. But there's value for that versus a virtual tour. So when I think of virtual tour, I think I'm at home, I'm on my laptop or my computer, and I can navigate around without having to go to Wyoming to see how big things are. I can do it do it virtually. But I do like the idea of hard physical artifacts as opposed to simple virtual stuff. I'm not opposed to a virtual wall if it's, you know, some sort of screen that's projecting, but even then, you know, it's like going to the airport, right? As the screens rotate through, I'm going to Spokane, but they're showing me flights to Atlanta, and so I've got to wait however long before, you know, they cycle through and get to the flights that start with S. And you know, there's no perfect solution by any stretch, but I think the real value is coming up with a clean method of, you know, how one decides whether or not to accept, that gives guidance to those that are potentially looking to donate, you know, what fits nicely within our confines, so that, you know, you don't have this thing that's 4 times bigger than everything next to it for no apparent reason. I think that's time well spent. Well, I understand one of the portraits is already done. It sounds like it's in safekeeping for now. The other one is in some other state of being produced. I don't think there's necessarily an urgency to pass either of these bills, and to retain them, to use them as a vehicle to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, so to speak. I think is probably a good way for the committee to move forward. Thank you.
So I'm just going to say, get off my lawn. All right. Is that what? Yeah. All right. Representative Wade.
Yeah, thank you. So this is more just a thought from my experience in my town of Dover. When we renamed a cemetery recently, we had a lot of discussion about, you know, if people just see a renaming, or if you know, they won't understand the context behind it unless you show it to them, in a sense. So with a lot of the portraits, I know this isn't necessarily directly pertaining to whether or not to hang them up, but there's just the thought of like including more historical context about the person, because if all you see is a portrait and their name and maybe their title of what they did, or who, like what they served in, you don't really know their story. You don't really know the meaning of what that person did. So just having more, even just like a small paragraph about their, like they have at museums with that historical context, might be beneficial, just to make people appreciate the portraits more if they actually understand the stories behind them.
Representative Wall.
And again, yes, under each portrait, you've probably noticed there's a plaque. They're very hard to read. When we did have a curator, a choice was made as to how much was to go on each plaque for the background of the lives of these people and when they served and this, that, and the other. So the information is available. We're in the process right now of having those plaques taken out and new ones put up that are easier to read. And so I personally think it's very valuable to have that information in my home. Just bragging rights. I was down in Concord, Mass yesterday because the 19th of April in 75, Fairleigh, Mass, still alive, who remembers that dreadful day, fateful day. Anyway, as I was viewing what I did down there, I thought, my home is older than this country, and I have portraits in my home. I have not written the information about these portraits in my home and how valuable that information is. When I die, nobody's going to know. And your
And
point
you're
is
on
well
the
taken. We
historical
need to do
committee?
something. But to have it in book form, to have it in virtual form also, as well as under the portraits, is hugely valuable. Thank you.
I am not hearing any disagreement with the idea that we take a look at all of this from a standpoint of a retained bill. I would be willing to accept a motion that we retain once we get out of this work session. We have it in our schedule that we can exec, and we certainly can do that. But are there any further comments from while we're in the work session? Representative Wade.
This is just to clarify. So the idea is to retain it, and then we would have like a later work session in the summer where we might bring in and invite people from the Historical Society or
Yep.
other groups, and just continue that discussion and workshop
Right.
that. And then would we be able to draft that amendment and vote on it for this session, or would that be next year that it would have to come back?
So the procedure would be on a retained bill that we do all of the things that you were just talking about as far as inviting people in and having a hearing basically, and we could break off into individual groups, or we could do it as a whole committee, and that would lead to legislation in September.
But that couldn't pass the House because we weren't in session by then. It would, yeah. so it would
Yes.
be- But it would actually get voted on.
Yes. Yes. Representative Sorensen.
Real quick question. The portrait of Senator Fuller Clark, was that bill already passed, or is it just a portrait that's sitting there? Do you know? The portrait of Senator Fuller Clark that was mentioned, has that legislation already been passed, or was it just donated and?
We haven't had that, have we?
Okay, so she just donate it and
But it's there.
I'll go look at it.
I did.
Yes,
That one is a beauty.
I'm sure.
I will tell you that I read the hearing from the Senate on this bill, on Sylvia Larson's bill, and that was one of the questions, I can't remember which senator asked in the committee hearing about that, and I think it was Senator Ricciardi said she would look into it and get back to whichever senator it was. So nobody knew. My point is nobody knew the answer to that in that Senate hearing either. So I don't. Well, in theory, what we're trying to do here is either make this process smoother or more logical or something. So that would be how I would suggest. So I'm happy to close the work session. I see no other conversation. So we are out of the work session, and then I would entertain a motion to retain both Senate Bill 186 and 200. Moved by Representative Turcott.
Mr. Chairman, just a quick point of order. Would we be doing these sequentially, or is one motion acceptable for?
Yeah, we probably should retain them both individually, right? Thank you. Yeah, so
So if he wants to revise his motion.
Motion to
he just
retain
said so
SB
moved. That's all.
Motion to retain SB 186.
Representative Turcott moves. Representative Wade seconds. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll ask our very fine clerk to call the roll.
Okay, the motion is to retain on SB 186. Clerk votes yes. Representative Turcott,
Yes.
Representative Verval,
Yes.
Representative Nodder,
Yes.
Representative Boyd,
Yes.
Representative Wall,
Yes.
Representative Pyre.
Yeah.
Representative Sorensen,
Yes.
Representative Wade,
Yes.
and the chair.
Yes.
And the motion passes 10-0.
Okay, we're done with Senate Bill 186. Representative Turcott, I recognize you for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Move to retain SB 200.
Representative Turcott moves to retain SB 200. Representative Wade seconds. Any further discussion? Seeing none, clerk can call the roll.
Motion is to retain SB 200. Clerk votes yes. Representative Turcott,
Yes.
Representative Verval,
Yes.
Representative Nodder,
Yes.
Representative Boyd,
Yes.
Representative Wall,
Yes.
Representative Pyre,
Yes.
Representative Sorensen,
Yes.
Representative Wade,
Yes.
Chair.
Yes.
Motion passes 10-0.
Okay, so we have 2 additional retained bills. And we can close the executive session, and we are done for the day. The only thing that I will suggest is that as soon as we have an amendment prepared to discuss for the nurses' bill, I'll set up another, well, it may be that we can even do this after would anyone have objections to doing this after a regular House session? These should be really short, Representative Sorensen.
I might have to bring my daughter with me, but if that's okay with the committees, that's
Can't
fine with me.
vote.
Nope, of course. She
Okay,
can't talk. We're
yeah,
good.
well, no, never mind. That may be, because it will be a simple thing. I'd hate to bring everybody in just for a quick conversation on on that amendment. It should be just a housekeeping type amendment is how it's been described to me. So I will get that to everyone as soon as I have it. And then typically we can just spread the word and hold a quick, we'll get it in the calendar and say at the end of session on Thursday, the 25th or something, whatever. And then we can get that done and we'll be all done with our Senate bills. All right. Any further questions before we close today? Representative Wade.
Thank you. So just a last question. So it was mentioned the work session on the portrait bills might happen sometime in the summer. I know you can't say any kind of precise date, but like June, July, later than that.
So a whole bunch of things are up in the air, right?
Yeah.
We have to be, and that brings up another point that it may seem I'm not answering your question, but I will get there. May 21st is the day that they are requesting all of the personal items that you may have had. I don't know if anybody's used the cabinets or anybody has a coat here or anybody has anything here. Is the day that they're requesting everything of a personal nature be out of this building. Things are going to be in a state of flux while we go to the other building. So it's hard to describe or even foresee where we will be meeting or how we will be meeting. So I think it's to be determined at this point. I wish I could give you a better answer than that. I will promise you we will not be meeting in this building.
Mr. Chairman?
Beyond that, I don't know.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
But typically that type of work wouldn't start till after we finish the legislative session. So typically, I think it would start in July at the earliest, right?
We can't possibly meet before July, so we may very well not meet until September.
People are busy summer anyway.
What's that?
People are busy in the summer with vacations.
Yes, good point. We'll try to make it as easy as possible, but what I would suggest is you start having the conversations with groups that you think may be involved in this and say, if you want a seat at the table, well, not a seat at the table, but if you want to testify and be able to explain what should happen or any, and in the meantime, maybe we can have a conversation with the historical committee and see if someone.
I'd like to ask to have this specifically put on the next agenda for May 5th. So perhaps some conversation on that occur before that's 2 weeks away.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. We do have to be careful of spreading information around to the entire committee and violate open meeting laws. So feel free to, any information you get or any conversation, run it through the vice chair or I, and we will disperse things from there out. Okay? So,
Quick question, if
yes,
I may?
sure.
To Representative Wall, the historic committee meetings, are those also on YouTube? Do you know?
I don't think so.
No,
They're not, okay.
to the best of my knowledge. We'll be meeting in State House 100. I don't think it's even in the calendar. I've repeatedly asked for it to be.
So I have other things scheduled that day, so I was just hoping maybe I'd be able to watch it later, but that's fine.
I don't know maybe I'll find that out and I will pass that on to everyone if you're interested in viewing or attending or something, the historical committee.
Yeah, I've asked repeatedly to put it in the calendar. Somebody's a little lax in that and has not done it, but I do know it's on May 5th.
Somebody's under the bus.
I will. I'll let you
Yeah,
know the
I
time.
know I can't make it, but I would be interested in watching it on YouTube if it's available, and if it's
I'll
not,
make a comment about
that's
that.
fine.
Yeah,
We
I'll
can
make a
talk.
comment about that too. I think it's rather important. Thank you. I'm glad
Thank you,
brought that
Representative.
up. How do
Thank-
you know so much?
Osmosis, I believe.
The rest of us have to leave, so,
Osmosis.
Well, you talked about patina of portraits and such, and I thought this guy
all
knows
right,
things.
we're closed for the afternoon. Thank you very much, everyone.